since it's just me whispering. And I might add some ambient sounds too. But we'll see kind of how the editing goes. But I think that could be nice. I've done that previously, so. But let's get into it. I hope you guys enjoy. So, this time around, I did not print when I was intending to print, so I'm just reading it off my laptop here. That's in front of me, so perhaps not as tactile, but and I am a little bit stuffy, but hopefully that means not too much sniffling or anything. But this story is called The Wetlands Journey, and this is part 1, since I split them into 2 parts usually. I wonder if there's an easier way to... Let me connect my mouse and I can scroll with that, instead of having to put my fingers on the little pad here. Okay, this is The Wetlands Journey, part 1. The air was heavy with the scent of water and earth. Each breath seemed to carry the weight of the damp moss and wild grass, as though the swamp itself had lungs that exhaled into the morning mist. The young traveler, barely in their 20s, though their mind felt years older, walked along a narrow trail of planks half sunken into the mud. Their shoes had already given up fighting off the damp, their socks squishing faintly with every step. That's the worst. The wetlands stretched out in all directions, an endless patchwork of shallow pools and tufts of grass rising like little islands. Great cypress trees leaned over the water with roots like pillars, their knees jutting out of the strange shapes. Dragonflies stitched the air together with quick, glinting flights, and somewhere off in the distance, a bullfrog croaked, its voice low and drawn out like a yawning drum. The travelers shifted the strap of their backpack higher on their shoulder. They had come here without a real plan, just the need to leave behind the noise. Life back home had become a blur of alarms, deadlines, and expectations. Classes, jobs, side projects, ambitions stacked up one on top of the other until each day felt like running through deep water, every movement exhausting, every breath shallow. Everyone seemed to have a plan for them, friends, family, professors. They all had visions of what success should look like, and each vision seemed louder than the traveler's own quiet thoughts. They weren't supposed to always be doing more, working harder, moving faster, building towards something big. Yet each night they collapsed into bed with the same hollow feeling that they hadn't done enough, hadn't caught up, hadn't earned the right to rest. So when the chance came to leave the city for a few days, to wander the trails that meandered through the wetlands, they had taken it. Maybe they thought the silence of a swamp would press pause on the endless chorus in their head. The boardwalk curved around a stand of tall grasses that whispered in the wind, their tips beaded with dew. The traveler paused and listened. The sound was so unlike the hum of traffic or the buzz of a phone. It was steady, unbothered, almost ancient. They closed their eyes for a moment, letting the breath of the wetlands surround them. When they opened their eyes again, they noticed something in the distance, the faint line of a fence, crooked and half swallowed by vines. It seemed out of place, man-made, and forgotten in the middle of the wilderness. Following curiosity more than intention, they left the boardwalk, stepping onto firmer ground where branches of soil rose above the water. Their feet sank slightly into the spongy earth, releasing a smell of peat and wild onion. The fence led side, and ivy crawled along its beams like an old friend that refused to leave. Chickens scattered across the yard, scratching at the damp soil, and a small garden stretched out beside the porch. Rows of kale, beans, and herbs growing defiantly in the swamp's thin light. The travelers stopped at the edge of the clearing, suddenly aware of how out of place they were. Their backpacks, their phone in their pocket, their restless thoughts, all felt sharp and artificial against the quiet rhythm of this place. They considered turning back to the boardwalk, to the trail that promised anonymity and solitude, but then the door opened. An older man stepped out, his clothes simple and sturdy, the kind of garments that carried stains, not from neglect, but from honest work. His hair was gray and tied back loosely, and his face bore lines that seemed etched by laughter as much as by time. For a moment, that's a fly, what the flip? Oh my goodness, this guy. This is gonna be like a Breaking Bad, that one Breaking Bad episode. There he is. Sorry guys. Got him. Okay, I should take a water break too. I think it's just allergies, but my mouth is dry and I'm like getting kind of stuffy. Ew. Let me turn down this gain a tad as well. I think it might be a little too extreme. And I'm gonna unplug my computer and energy saver. I feel like that would make my computer run less wildly, but yet I can still hear the fans of it running, which is kind of annoying. I guess I can't run the audio software and open a Google Doc at the same time without freaking out, but okay. Where were we? You look a little lost, the man finally said, his voice deep and warm, carrying across the damp air like the creak of an old oak. The traveler hesitated, shifting from foot to foot, just wandering, they admitted. I didn't expect to find anything out here. Well, the man replied, leaning against the porch rail. Not many do. This place likes to hide until you need it. The words felt oddly comforting, though the traveler wasn't sure why. After a pause, the man gestured towards the porch. Come on up. I was about to put some tea on. The kettle's big enough for two. Something in the traveler resisted. The part of them that always calculated time, weighed schedules, wondered what they should be doing instead. But another part, quieter and more tender, urged them forward. Before they could overthink it, their feet carried them across the yard, past the clucking chickens and the rows of beans to the wooden steps of the porch. The man opened the door, and a wave of warmth spilled out, scented with wood smoke and herbs. Inside, the house was modest but alive. A table, scarred with years of use, stood at the center, with mismatched chairs pulled close. Shelves lined the walls, holding jars of dried herbs, tools, and little carvings of animals. The floor creaked underfoot in a way that felt less like a flaw and more like a heartbeat. As the travelers set their bags down by the door, a strange sense of stillness came over them, like the moment after a storm when the air is heavy but calm. They didn't know what lay ahead or how long they might stay, but for the first time in what felt like years, they weren't in a rush. The kettle began to whistle, and the man poured 2 cups of steaming tea. Sliding one across the table, hands around it and feeling the warmth seep into their skin. "Tell me," the man said with a small smile, "what brings you wandering out into the swamp?" The traveler hesitated, their throat tight with words they'd been carrying for too long. And in that kitchen, with the smell of tea and wood smoke and the quiet patience of the wetlands pressing close around the walls, they finally felt like maybe they could answer. That is the end of part 1. I might cut the video here, and I'll be right back for part 2. Okay, this is now part 2 of the wetlands journey. The traveler's words became haltingly at first. They spoke of weight of expectations, of always chasing after something just out of reach, of the constant pressure to prove themselves. Their voice wavered, not from fear of judgment, but from the strange relief of finally letting it out. The older man listened quietly, his hands wrapped around his cup, his eyes steady and kind. When the traveler finally trailed off, the man nodded slowly. "I've heard that before," he said. "For myself, mostly. Used to think every day was a race. Always trying to build faster, plant more, make it all come together before time ran out. Truth is, time doesn't run out as quick as we think. It's just us who keep sprinting." The words settled deep, the way rain sinks into soil. That night, the travelers stayed in a spare room, its walls lined with shelves of books and handmade quilts folded nearly on a trunk. The sheets smelled faintly of cedar, and though the mattress was lumpy in places, sleep came easier than it had in months. Outside, frogs sang in the darkness, and the swamp seemed to rock gently into rest. The next morning, light filtered through the thin curtains in soft, golden strands. The man was already outside when the traveler woke, moving slowly through the yard with a basket in hand. Chickens gathered at his feet, pecking eagerly at the feed he scattered. "Breakfast starts with them," he said, with a grin when the traveler stepped out onto the porch. "Care to help?" At first, the traveler felt awkward, their movements uncertain as they followed his example, but soon they were laughing softly as the chickens flapped around and darted around them, their feathers catching the sunlight in surprising hues of bronze and white. Well, the work was simple. Scatter, gather, refill the water draught, but it carried a rhythm, an ease that made the traveler forget to check their phone or glance at the clock. Inside, they cooked together, fresh eggs cracked in a pan, greens from the garden tossed into a skillet. The meal was plain but rich, eaten slowly at the wooden table while steam curled from mugs of tea. "You'd be surprised," the man said between bites, "how much a body and mind can mend when you stop asking them to race." The days unfolded gently after that, each one marked not by alarms or deadlines, but by the task that needed doing. One afternoon, they worked together to mend a section of a fence, pulling away the vines and setting the posts straighter. The traveler's hands blistered, unused to the roughness of tools, but the man only chuckled and said, "That's just your skin learning something new." Another day, they weeded the garden, the smell of the fresh earth rising as they knelt in the rows. The traveler found himself noticing details they'd usually miss. The glisten of dew on a beet leaf, the patient hum of bees drifting from flower to flower, the way the soil gave way gently beneath their fingertips. Evenings were quieter still. They sat on the porch, sipping tea as the swamp grew dark around them. Fireflies blinked across the clearing, and the chorus of frogs rose like an orchestra tuning itself into the night. Sometimes Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. The silence between worlds felt as full as any conversation. It wasn't that the travelers worried. It wasn't that the travelers' worries disappeared. They still thought of the city, the deadlines waiting, the ambitions they hadn't yet fulfilled, but the panic softened, the sharp edge of the urgency dulled. Here, in the simple rhythm of feeding, mending, and resting, they began to understand what the man had meant. Time wasn't a sprint, it was more like the swamp itself, broad, winding, full of hidden paths and slow waters that eventually found their way forward. On the third evening, as they had shelved means together by lamplight, the traveler asked, "Don't you ever feel like you're falling behind? Like the world is racing on without you?" The man smiled faintly, setting another bean aside. "The world will always run fast, but it doesn't mean you have to. You can spend a lifetime chasing it and still feel behind. Or you can tend to what's in front of you and realize you've been exactly where you need to be all along." The traveler sat with that thought, turning it over like a smooth stone in their hand. For the first time, it didn't feel like an impossible truth. It felt like something they could carry. When it came time to leave, the traveler lingered at the porch steps. The man handed them a small bundle of dried herbs from the garden. "For the road," he said simply. "A reminder that things grow slow, but they do grow." The traveler smiled, their throat tight with gratitude. They shouldered their pack and stepped back into the swamp, the boardwalk trail leading them once more through the cypress and water dragonflies. But the air felt different now, lighter, calmer, less heavy on their chest. The traveler knew the noise of the world would return and the expectations would still be there, but they also knew something else. They had time to work, to rest, and to live. And as the wetlands stretched around them, ancient and unhurried, they let themselves believe it. And that is all. I thought that was a pretty good little short story. That was kind of the premise I had in mind. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys are doing something for your physical or mental health.